At 0620, on January 24th, 1945, First Lieutenant Garlin Murl Conner stood in the battalion command post near Houssen, France, listening to artillery pound the frozen ground 300 yards forward. 25 years old. 28 months of continuous combat. 4 silver stars. 7 wounds. The last one had sent him to the hospital 3 weeks ago. He checked himself out early when he heard 3rd Battalion was moving to the Colmar pocket. Now 600 German infantry and 6 Mark VI Tiger tanks were forming up for a counterattack. Conner could hear the engines. Deep, rumbling diesels that shook the walls of the farmhouse they were using as headquarters. 3rd Battalion had been bleeding for weeks. The Colmar pocket was a 45-mile German salient west of the Rhine, and High Command wanted it eliminated before the spring offensive into Germany. The problem was the weather. 10 degrees below zero most nights, snow 3 feet deep in places, and the Germans were dug in hard. Conner's battalion had already lost 83 men in the past 10 days. Frostbite took almost as many as enemy fire. The German 19th Army was defending every inch of frozen ground with veteran troops who knew this was their last chance to stop the American advance. 3rd Battalion's forward line was spread thin, too thin. Company K held the left flank with maybe 70 effectives. Behind them, another 100 riflemen in reserve positions. Behind that, the artillery batteries that were supposed to keep them alive. The problem was visibility. Forward observers couldn't see the German assembly areas through the morning fog and smoke from burning buildings in Houssen. The battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Lloyd Ramsey, stared at the map on the table. He needed someone forward, way forward. Someone who could call artillery fire directly onto the German tanks before they overran Company K's positions. Ramsey looked up. His eyes found Conner. Conner had been a forward observer before his promotion to intelligence officer. He knew artillery fire procedures better than anyone in the battalion. He also knew what Ramsey was about to ask was likely a death sentence. If you want to see how Conner's decision turned out, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the men who saved democracy. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Conner. Ramsey didn't waste words. They needed an observer forward of the line, someone who could see the German advance and direct fire. Radio wouldn't reach the batteries from that far out, too much interference from all the artillery. The observer would need to run telephone wire, 400 yards, through the impact zone, through German artillery fire that was already tearing apart the forward positions. Conner volunteered. No hesitation. He grabbed a field telephone and 800 yards of wire on a spool. Private Robert Dutil volunteered to go with him. 2 men, 1 mission. Get forward and stop 600 Germans and 6 Tiger tanks. At 0645, Conner stepped out of the command post into hell. German artillery was walking across the American positions. Trees exploded. Shrapnel screamed through the air. Conner started running. Dutil followed, unreeling wire as they went. And Conner knew that in about 10 minutes, he'd either be calling fire on the most important target of his life, or he'd be dead. Conner ran through smoke and fire. Behind him, Dutil struggled with the wire spool, paying out line as fast as he could. German 105s were landing every 15 seconds. Close enough that Conner felt the pressure waves slam his chest. Close enough that dirt and shrapnel rained down on his helmet. 300 yards to the American forward line, then another 100 beyond that to where Conner needed to be. He needed to see the German assembly area. He needed clear line of sight to the Tiger tanks. A shell hit 30 yards to his left. The blast threw Conner sideways into frozen mud. His ears rang. He couldn't hear anything except a high-pitched whine. But he got up, kept running. The wire was still paying out behind him. That meant Dutil was still alive back there, still moving. 200 yards. Trees were coming apart. German artillery was systematically destroying every piece of cover between the command post and the forward positions. Branches fell. Trunks split. One oak tree took a direct hit and disintegrated into splinters that flew horizontally through the smoke. Conner hit the ground, crawled 20 yards, stood up, ran again. At 0652, He reached Company K's forward line. Riflemen were huddled in their positions, heads down, waiting for the artillery to lift. That's when the German infantry would come. That's when men would die. Conner didn't stop. He kept going forward, past the riflemen, past the last American positions, into no man's land. 100 yards ahead, through the morning fog, Conner could see the German lines, and beyond that, the dark shapes of Tiger tanks. 6 of them, 56 tons each, 8.8 centimeter main guns that could destroy a Sherman from 2,000 yards. They were forming up for the assault. Conner found a shallow irrigation ditch 30 yards in front of the American line. It was maybe 18 inches deep. Not enough to stop bullets, barely enough to stop shrapnel. But it gave him the one thing he needed: line of sight. He dove into the ditch, set up the telephone, cranked the handle. The line was still good. Command post answered immediately. Conner gave them his position, told them he could see the entire German assembly area. 6 Tigers, estimated 600 infantry forming up behind them. Range approximately 1,000 yards. The artillery liaison officer came on the line, asked Conner if he was sure about his position. 30 yards in front of the American line, in the open, with 600 Germans about to advance directly toward him. Conner confirmed. He was sure. The liaison officer asked what fire mission Conner wanted. Conner looked at the German lines, looked at the Tigers starting to move, looked at the infantry climbing out of their positions, all of them heading straight for him, for Company K, for 3rd Battalion. He gave coordinates: battery fire, high explosive, converged sheaf pattern, repeat fire at will until he said stop. The first rounds would arrive in 90 seconds. The German infantry started walking forward. Conner pressed himself into the frozen mud at the bottom of the ditch. He had a submachine gun, 45 rounds, a telephone, and about 60 seconds before the first German soldier would be close enough to see him lying there, close enough to throw a grenade, close enough to end this before it even started. The first American shells arrived at 0700. Conner heard them coming. The sound started as a distant whistle, got louder, turned into a shriek, then the impact. 6 rounds, high explosive, detonating right on the German assembly area. Conner watched through the smoke. He could see German infantry diving for cover. 1 Tiger stopped moving. Conner cranked the telephone, told the fire direction center to shift left 50 yards and repeat. More effective. 30 seconds later, another salvo. This time Conner saw Germans go down, not just taking cover, going down and staying down. The artillery was working. But the Germans didn't stop. They kept coming. 600 men don't turn around because of artillery fire. Not when they're veteran troops. Not when they've been ordered to break through at any cost. The Tiger tanks started their engines. All 6. The ground vibrated. Conner could feel it through the frozen dirt. 56 tons of armor and steel, grinding forward through the snow and mud. German infantry moved up behind the tanks, using them for cover. Smart tactics. American artillery couldn't touch the Tigers. The shells just bounced off that frontal armor. But the infantry behind them was exposed every time they moved between the tanks. Conner called for another shift. Right 25 yards, repeat fire. He was walking the artillery barrage back and forth across the German advance, trying to hit the infantry, trying to slow them down, buying time for Company K to get ready. 7:05. The Germans were 400 yards out. Conner could see their faces now through the smoke and fog. Young faces, old faces, all of them moving forward with rifles at the ready. The Tigers were spreading out. 2 on the left flank, 2 center, 2 right. Classic armor assault formation. They'd hit the American line in 3 places simultaneously. Overwhelm the defense, break through, roll up the flanks. Conner adjusted fire again. He was bringing the artillery closer. 300 yards now between the impact zone and his position. Company K riflemen could hear the shells going over their heads, landing on the Germans, but not stopping them. 7:15. Germans at 200 yards. Conner could hear them shouting to each other. officers giving orders, NCOs pushing the infantry forward, machine guns starting to fire. Bullets cracked over Conner's ditch. He pressed lower. A Tiger fired its main gun. The sound was enormous. The shell hit somewhere behind Conner, behind the American line. The Germans were ranging their guns, finding targets. In another minute they'd have the range perfect. Then they'd systematically destroy every American position they could see. Conner cranked the phone, asked for battery plus fire. That meant every available gun in range, not just one battery, everything. The Fire Direction Center confirmed. 12 guns, 4 batteries, all converging on the coordinates Conner was giving them, 720. The biggest artillery concentration Conner had ever called came screaming down on the German advance. The noise was continuous, not individual explosions anymore, just one long rolling thunder of high explosive and shrapnel. Conner saw Germans disappear in the smoke, saw pieces of equipment flying through the air. But the Tigers kept coming, and behind them, the infantry that survived kept moving forward, getting closer, closer. 150 yards now. Then Conner heard something that made his blood freeze. German voices. Close. Too close. Not out front with the main advance. Behind him. Germans had infiltrated around his left flank. They were between him and the American line, and they were moving toward his ditch. Conner didn't move, didn't look back. He kept the telephone to his ear and kept adjusting fire on the main German advance. If he turned around to deal with the infiltrators, the Tigers would break through. If he ignored the infiltrators, they'd kill him in the next 60 seconds. He chose to ignore them. 725. The German voices were maybe 20 yards behind his ditch. Conner could hear boots crunching in frozen snow, could hear equipment rattling. 3 men, maybe 4, moving carefully, trying to find the American forward observer they knew had to be somewhere out here, calling in all this artillery. Conner cranked the phone, whispered the next fire correction. The Fire Direction Center acknowledged. More shells came down. The main German force was at 100 yards now, close enough that Conner could see the eagles on their helmets, close enough that machine gun fire was hitting all around his position. The infiltrators behind him stopped moving. They'd heard something. Maybe heard Conner on the phone. Maybe saw the wire running from his ditch back toward the American lines. Conner heard a German voice say something sharp, an order, then boots running. Conner grabbed his submachine gun with his left hand, kept the telephone in his right. The Germans came around the edge of the ditch, 3 of them, rifles up. They saw Conner at the same instant he saw them. Conner fired first, half a magazine, 45 caliber rounds at 10 yards. All 3 Germans went down. But the noise had given away his position to everyone within 200 yards. Germans in the main advance started shifting fire toward his ditch. Bullets tore into the frozen earth. Shrapnel from a near miss peppered the ground 6 feet from Conner's head. He went back to the telephone, called for fire closer, much closer. The Germans were at 75 yards now. The Tigers were at 100. In another minute they'd be on top of the American positions, on top of Conner. 7:30. A German machine gun found Conner's ditch. Bullets walked across the ground in front of him, behind him, all around him. Dirt kicked up in his face. He couldn't lift his head without getting shot. But he didn't need to see any more. He knew where the Germans were, right in front of him, getting closer every second. Conner called for fire danger close. That meant artillery landing within 600 yards of friendly positions. The Fire Direction Center hesitated, asked Conner to confirm. Conner confirmed. He gave new coordinates. The impact zone would be 50 yards from his position. 50 yards from the American line, right on top of the advancing Germans. The artillery came down like the end of the world. Conner felt the concussion through the ground, felt his teeth rattle. Dirt and frozen mud rained down on him. The noise was so loud he couldn't hear the telephone operator trying to talk to him. But the Germans kept coming. They were at 50 yards, then 40, then 30. Conner could see individual soldiers now, could see their uniforms, their weapons, their faces twisted with effort and fear and determination. A Tiger broke through the smoke 25 yards in front of Conner's position. Its main gun traversed left, then right, looking for targets. The commander's hatch was open. An officer stood in the turret with binoculars, scanning the American lines, looking for the forward observer who was tearing his advance apart. The officer's binoculars stopped moving. He was looking directly at Conner's ditch. The Tiger commander raised his hand, pointed directly at Conner's ditch. The turret started to traverse. That 8.8 centimeter gun was coming around. In 5 seconds, it would be aimed directly at Conner. In 10 seconds, there would be nothing left of him but a crater. Conner cranked the telephone. Didn't wait for the Fire Direction Center to acknowledge, just started talking. Gave new coordinates, his own position. Asked for all batteries, maximum rate of fire. Told them to blanket his position with everything they had. The operator on the other end hesitated. Asked Conner to repeat. Those coordinates would put the impact zone directly on top of the forward observer. Directly on top of Conner. Conner repeated the order. Said it clearly. Said it twice. Then added one more thing. Keep firing until he told them to stop, even if they lost contact, even if the line went dead. Keep firing. The operator acknowledged. Said the fire mission was on the way. Said it would arrive in 45 seconds. Said good luck. Conner dropped the phone, pressed himself into the bottom of the ditch, made himself as small as possible. 45 seconds. The Tiger's gun was almost in position. German infantry were at 20 yards. Conner could hear their boots, their voices, their equipment. Then he heard something else. The whistle. Getting louder. Getting closer. The entire American artillery group converging on his position. 12 guns, all firing for effect, all aimed at the same coordinates. The coordinates Conner had given them. His own position. The world exploded. Conner felt the ground heave under him, felt the concussion slam his body down into the frozen mud. The noise wasn't noise anymore. It was a physical force. It crushed the air out of his lungs, made his vision go dark at the edges. Shells were landing 5 yards away. 3 yards, right on the edge of his ditch. The Tiger that had been 25 yards in front of him disappeared in smoke and fire. German infantry vanished. The entire German advance just ceased to exist in a continuous rolling barrage of high explosive. But Conner could still hear them, through the explosions, through the ringing in his ears. German voices screaming, officers trying to reorganize, NCOs trying to rally the survivors. The attack hadn't stopped. It had just been disrupted, slowed down. The Germans were still coming. 7:40. The artillery had been falling on Conner's position for 10 minutes straight. Shrapnel was everywhere. The ditch was filling with dirt and debris from near misses. Conner's uniform was shredded. He was bleeding from half a dozen small wounds. Couldn't tell if it was shrapnel or frozen dirt cutting his face and hands. He picked up the telephone. It still worked. Gave new coordinates. Shifted the fire 25 yards forward. Walked it on to the next wave of Germans trying to advance through the smoke. The Germans had gone to ground. Conner could see shapes in the smoke. Men crawling. Men running bent over. Men dragging wounded. But they weren't retreating. They were regrouping. Getting ready for another push. A Tiger emerged from the smoke. Different one. This tank had made it through the barrage. Its track was damaged. It was moving slow, limping. But it was moving. And its gun was functional. 7:50. Conner had been in the ditch for over an hour. The Germans had been trying to advance for over an hour, and they still weren't giving up. Neither was Conner. He cranked the phone. Called for more fire. The same coordinates. His own position. Again. The Fire Direction Center asked if he was sure. Conner was sure. The shells came down. and the Germans got closer. 800 hours. 2 hours since Conner ran forward with the telephone wire. The German attack should have broken through by now. Should have overrun Company K. Should have rolled up 3rd Battalion's entire left flank. But it hadn't. Because one man in a ditch kept calling artillery fire on positions the Germans needed to advance through. The cost was mounting. Conner could see German dead in the smoke, dozens of them, maybe more. The artillery was working, but the survivors kept coming, kept trying, because 600 men don't quit just because the first 100 died. The telephone line had been cut twice by near misses. Both times Conner crawled out of the ditch under fire, found the break, spliced the wire back together with frozen fingers, got back in the ditch, kept calling fire. 8:15. A group of German infantry made it to within 15 yards of Conner's position. They were using shell craters for cover, moving from hole to hole, getting closer. Conner called fire on them. The shells landed so close that shrapnel cut through his jacket. But the Germans died. More came, different angle, from the right. They'd figured out where Conner was. They knew the forward observer in that ditch was the only thing stopping their advance. Kill him and the artillery would stop. Kill him and the Tigers could break through. 8:30. Germans at 10 yards. Conner could hear them talking to each other, could hear them planning. They were going to rush him, all at once, overwhelm him before he could call more fire. Conner picked up his submachine gun, checked the magazine. 20 rounds left, against maybe 15 Germans 10 yards away. The math wasn't good. He cranked the telephone instead, called for fire on his own position. 3rd time. The Fire Direction Center didn't even question it anymore. They just acknowledged and sent the shells. The barrage came down. Conner felt heat wash over his ditch, felt the pressure, felt pieces of Germans hit the ground around him. When the smoke cleared, the infantry at 10 yards were gone. But more kept coming. The Tigers kept coming. The attack kept coming. The Germans had committed to this assault. They were going to break through or die trying. Most of them were dying, but they weren't stopping. 8:45. A German soldier appeared at the edge of Conner's ditch, 5 yards, close enough that Conner could see the kid wasn't even 20 years old, could see the fear on his face, could see him raising his rifle. Conner shot him, point blank. The German fell backward into the snow. 2 more appeared, same distance. Conner shot them both. His submachine gun clicked empty. He dropped it, picked up the telephone, called for more fire. The Germans 5 yards away were the advance scouts. Behind them were more. Always more. The artillery came down. Conner's ditch was filling with shell fragments, with frozen dirt, with debris. He was lying in 3 inches of mixed ice and mud and blood. His blood. German blood. He couldn't tell anymore. 900 hours. 3 hours since Conner had run forward with the telephone wire. Company K was still holding. 3rd Battalion's line was intact. The German attack was stalling, breaking up, losing momentum. But they weren't retreating. Not yet. The Tigers were still moving forward, still trying to find a way through. And the German infantry was still trying to kill the American forward observer who wouldn't die. Conner cranked the telephone, asked how much ammunition the batteries had left. The Fire Direction Center said they were running low. Maybe 20 more minutes of sustained fire. Maybe. Conner looked at the Germans advancing through the smoke. 20 minutes might be enough, or it might not. 9:15. Conner heard something different in the German voices. Not orders anymore. Not rally calls. Arguments. Officers arguing with NCOs. NCOs arguing with enlisted men. The attack was breaking down. Not from lack of courage, from arithmetic. Too many dead. Not enough survivors to continue the assault. A Tiger tried one more push, came straight at the American line, came straight at Conner's ditch. The tank was buttoned up now. No commander visible in the turret. Just 56 tons of armor grinding forward through the bodies and shell craters. Conner called fire. Not on his position this time, 20 yards forward, right in the Tiger's path. The artillery came down. The Tiger kept coming. Shells were bouncing off its frontal armor, but the tank couldn't see through the smoke and explosions. It was driving blind. The Tiger rolled over a crater and got stuck. Track dug into frozen mud. engines screaming, going nowhere. The crew tried to reverse, tried to rocket free. The tank wasn't moving, just sitting there, exposed. Conner called for more fire, concentrated everything on the stuck Tiger. The shells kept coming down, not penetrating the armor, but keeping the crew buttoned up, keeping them trapped. After 10 minutes, the Tiger's engine stopped. Conner couldn't tell if it was damaged or out of fuel, or if the crew had just given up. 9:30. The German infantry started pulling back. Not a rout, not a panic, a tactical withdrawal. Officers were maintaining control, but they were withdrawing, moving back through the smoke, carrying their wounded, leaving their dead. The Tigers that could still move started reversing, backing away from the American line. The attack was over. The Germans had lost. Conner stayed in the ditch, kept the telephone to his ear, kept watching. This could be a trick. The Germans might be regrouping for another push. He'd seen it before, false withdrawals, then a fresh assault when the defenders relaxed. But no fresh assault came. The Germans kept moving back. By 9:45, the firing had mostly stopped, just occasional shots. Nervous riflemen in Company K shooting at shadows in the smoke. Conner tried to stand up. His legs wouldn't work. 3 hours lying in frozen mud had taken everything out of him. He couldn't feel his feet, couldn't feel his hands. His entire body was shaking, not from fear, from cold, from exhaustion, from shock. He cranked the telephone, told the Fire Direction Center the German attack had been stopped, told them he was coming back, tried to stand again, fell back into the ditch. 15 minutes later, American soldiers found him. Lieutenant Harold Wigetman and a squad from Company K. They'd waited until they were sure the Germans weren't coming back. Then they'd moved forward to find their forward observer. They found Conner, lying in the ditch, covered in frozen mud and blood, the telephone still in his hand, the wire running back 400 yards to the command post. Alive. Somehow still alive. They pulled him out, carried him back to the American line. Conner kept asking if Company K was okay, if 3rd Battalion had held. They told him yes, everyone held, because of him. Behind them in the smoke and snow, German bodies lay scattered across 400 yards of frozen ground. At least 50 dead, probably more. Over 100 wounded. 6 Tiger tanks, 3 destroyed, 2 damaged, 1 abandoned, 1 American, in a ditch, for 3 hours, with a telephone. They carried Conner to the battalion aid station. The medics stripped off his shredded uniform, found shrapnel wounds, cuts from frozen debris, frostbite on his hands and feet, exhaustion so complete he couldn't stand without help. But nothing that would kill him, nothing that would send him home. On February 10th, 1945, 16 days after the battle at Houssen, Lieutenant General Alexander Patch presented 1st Lieutenant Garlin Murl Conner with the Distinguished Service Cross, second highest award for valor the Army could give. Patch told Conner it should have been the Medal of Honor. His battalion commander had recommended it, but the paperwork hadn't gone through in time. Conner was shipping out to a new assignment. The DSC would have to be enough. Conner didn't argue. He'd done his job. Company K had held. 3rd Battalion survived. That was enough. He stayed in combat until June, fought his way across the Rhine, into Germany, took part in 4 more major operations, got wounded again. By the time the war ended, Conner had spent 28 consecutive months in combat, earned 4 Silver Stars, 4 Bronze Stars, 7 Purple Hearts, 1 Distinguished Service Cross, and a battlefield commission from sergeant to 1st lieutenant. He came home to Kentucky on June 22, 1945. The town of Albany threw him a parade. That's where he met Pauline Wells, 23 years old, watching this quiet soldier ride through town in the back of a car, wearing more medals than she'd ever seen on one man. She couldn't believe the stories people told her, couldn't believe this small man had done what they said he'd done. They were married a week later. Married for 53 years. Raised one son. Ran a 36-acre farm. Conner never talked about the war. Told people he'd left those memories across the Atlantic Ocean. Told Pauline he wanted to forget. He died November 5th, 1998, age 79. Kidney failure and diabetes. His medals were in a cardboard box in the back of a closet. 2 years before his death, a veteran named Richard Chilton contacted the family. Chilton was researching his uncle who'd served with Conner at Anzio. He asked to see Conner's service records, found the Distinguished Service Cross citation, found the recommendation for the Medal of Honor that had never been processed, found witness statements from officers who'd been there at Houssen. Chilton started a campaign. Pauline joined him, then historians, then Kentucky lawmakers, then national veterans organizations. For 22 years, they fought the Army bureaucracy, fought the regulations that said Medal of Honor applications had to be submitted within 3 years of the action, fought a federal court that ruled against them in 2014. They kept fighting, kept presenting new evidence, kept telling Conner's story. On March 29, 2018, the White House announced President Trump would present the Medal of Honor to First Lieutenant Garlin Murl Conner. On June 26, 2018, 73 years and 5 months after Conner spent 3 hours in a frozen ditch calling artillery fire on his own position, his widow accepted the Medal of Honor. Pauline was 89 years old. Their son Paul stood beside her. Grandchildren and great-grandchildren filled the East Room of the White House. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about forward observers who saved battalions with telephones and courage. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure Garlin Murl Conner doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.